What is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick 6 show, Week 9. Joined, as always, usual suspects, two of the sharpest people in all of DFS, in all the fantasy NFL world. Batting first, leading off, Hribar, you know him from Sharp Football Analysis, Rich Hribar. Hey, let's continue the bit that didn't work from last week. Could you believe it's Week 9?
I can actually, Dean, but especially this week, where it's been a little longer start to the week, given things going on in our country. So hopefully we provide a little levity and break from that for everybody that wants to talk about some, early Week 9 football. I don't know what we're going to get tomorrow on the football field will resemble football, or it'll just be like a preseason game. But there's going to be a game tomorrow, supposedly, as well. But, yeah, man, I'm happy to come hang out with you guys, share some early thoughts. This is a fun-looking slate, too, and we got a lot of weird pieces on the board because the season's starting to get kind of weird.
Yeah, it's an 11-game main slate. Of course, you referenced tomorrow night the Green Bay San Fran game. And, we're going to have content here at RG, on the site, content on the YouTube as well. What's up, YouTube? If you guys are live with us, feel free to comment in the chat, like, subscribe, notifications, all that good deal. We much appreciate it. Devin's going to go ahead and drop a link for you guys if you want to get RG Premium. Core 4 gets $5 off the first month. Check out that link. Have at it. We're not going to be showing off our fancy tools. We show them off on the weekends and other shows as well, some of the premium tools. And actually, Hribar, are you not? I feel like I was taking a peek at the schedule. Are you joining me this Sunday? I think that's a thing.
I will be. This Sunday morning, I will be coming on with you.
Awesome. Yeah, so Sunday, if you guys are not aware out there, Hribar's going to be joining me. We kind of shuffled up every single week, but 3 hours before lock.
I'll bring the donuts.
What's the top donut on the board? What do you have for me?
I'm like someone that I just like nice simple donuts. If I'm gonna go something with like some kind of like icing or anything, I like maple, but I like a simple like either just a plain glaze or like a blueberry cake donut.
Ooh, maple sounds like a GPP. That sounds pretty contrarian for me. That game on Thursday where you referenced that Green Bay San Fran. Thankfully, we won't talk about it, but there will be a showdown video. Blenders probably partaking in it. And I'm sure we'll have all sorts of cockamamie theories that almost definitely can work because who knows how to build a lineup tomorrow night. It's going to be a disaster. We don't talk about the Sunday night game either. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, New England, and the Jets on Monday. That'll be fun for sure as well, too. Not talking about that. And Cincy, Cleveland, the Rams, Philly, all on bye. Daigle, welcome to Week 9. What's your favorite donut?
I prefer apple fritters. That might be a old man contrarian take as well, but that's where I stand.
Is that a donut? Is that a donut?
I mean, so to be fair, I like, if we're going full on donut, I like the boutique places. Like my favorite place ever, there's a place in Santa Monica called Sidecar. And I used to go in, also Voodoo in Denver and Portland. But like Sidecar, you go in, and of course, it's like way too expensive for a dozen donuts. But, and I do buy a dozen because I think like I'm The Rock and I can just handle a dozen when that's clearly not the case. These body forms are totally different. But like they give you like eggnog donuts. They give you like poached egg inside your donuts. They do all these crazy things. So that's my kind of donut, is just out of this world different.
There you go. You got some hot takes when it comes to donuts. I've heard of Voodoo, the one in Portland. Apparently, they're famous for the Simpsons
Grape
donuts,
Ape.
I believe.
Grape Ape from Voodoo is probably the best donut in this land. It is fantastic.
All right. We'll make a trip out there one of these days. What we do, of course, on the Pick 6 show, we focus on 3 of the main games here that we're focused on, obviously, the ones that are kind of popping on a Wednesday night. Remember, if you're watching us on the replay, this is Wednesday night. News flow is goofy, especially this particular season for the NFL.
Especially this week.
Yeah, because we might be talking. Chase Daniel can definitely be a thing, and we don't know if he's a thing until like Sunday morning as of right now. He's 4K on DK. By the way, I saw you guys commenting in the YouTube chat, and like they were saying that I focus too much on DK, and I'm trying to talk FanDuel. I apologize. My brain is hardwired for DK, but I play on both sites. I'll do my best to give the head nod and the acknowledgement to FanDuel as well.
I'll do my best as well because I do actually play a lot on FanDuel. The only thing about FanDuel is that you can pretty much play whoever the hell you want to, so that's why it's hard. But I will do my best to focus on FanDuel too.
The cap is getting a little bit tighter, though. Have you not noticed? At least yes. I've noticed that. And there's not a lot of quote-unquote value, at least as of right now, from what I can see, at least. Like that I feel comfortable with. That's where I'm at on a Wednesday night. Is that kind of where you're at too as far as building lineups, or you like what you're seeing as far as
So far, so good. I mean, I had a nice little placeholder, and I felt good about it on Wednesday. But if it goes like last week, I'm just going to change it on Sunday morning and lose everything. So I don't know what the hell I was doing last week. I did that last week, man. That was like the token rule. You always say, like, don't get thrown off. And, like, I woke up, I went outside, and I'm here. I'm, like, 20 minutes west of Cleveland and went outside, and I was like, oh, hell no. Like, that game's going to be a disaster. And, like, I started changing lineups around, and, like, then it just snowballed. I went off of the Cleveland Raiders game and took that into, like, taking Devontae Adams out of lineups.
Uh-huh.
It was just like it all went real south real quick.
Yeah.
At about 2:30.
Can I tell you a worse story? Well, it's not a worse story, but I was doing the same thing. And what happened is that I turned around and I'm watching. I have a Chiefs stack going on. I had a double stack. I have Derrick Henry going on. I have DK waiting in the afternoon. I'm thinking, oh, like this is it. Like this is finally the week. I'm still going to be just even money and trying to win more money the rest of the season. But this is the week I finally get it back. And then I look up in my DK contest, and I usually enter all the mid-stake like SPY tournaments. I accidentally max entered every 10-cent tournament. So I took the money from 10-cent entries as opposed to the mid-stake ranges. And so that is how my week went, only a few days after making fun of you, Dean, for the Hunter Harrison Bryant fiasco. Karma all the way around.
There you go.
This is a sharp outfit. This is a sharp outfit right here.
Really?
That means you're due, Hribar. You're due, Hribar. You're gonna goof. You're gonna screw something up this week. I'm not really sure.
I told you I did on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be disastrous.
My original lineup, my original lineups on both sides would have smashed. They would have crushed. Like but I got up Sunday morning, so went outside, started moving guys around and altering my lineups, and just totally botched everything.
I'm thankful, at least as of Wednesday night, I don't think we have to deal with weather so much. Or like I'm done with the weather week.
No.
Hopefully it's not going to be a thing so much this week. Stay tuned. Obviously, Kevin Roth will be all with that as well here at RotoGrinders. All right, we focus on 3 games. The one game that popped for me and the one game that popped for you guys as well. No surprise, Seattle versus Buffalo. We know about Seattle's ridiculous offense. Their defense is vulnerable as well, too. And except when they're playing against Jimmy G. And like last week, I should go without saying, I was a chalk donkey and I had so much Jimmy G and Kittle. It was a disaster for me, so I'm happy. DFS, when it goes well, no matter when it goes poorly, there's always a new day. There's always a new week. We start back up at 0 again. I'm happy to move on to week 9. Daigle, set the stakes here as far as Seattle and Buffalo, because this feels like just the most beautiful game. I wish it was in a dome. It's in Buffalo, but it appears like the Buffalo weather is going to be okay, relatively speaking, considering it's Buffalo. How much do we love this game? Because this is the one that pops for me right off the gate, and I'm sure it's the same deal with the chat and everybody else.
Oh, we love the game. And even if it's like last week where Seattle just hung nearly 40 points on the 49ers, the fact is Seattle built that lead still behind Russell Wilson. And that's the issue here in tournaments and cash games, honestly, weekly, is that you got to go one of these guys, either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. And the past 2 weeks, we've got it right. Pretty much just taking the guy up lower ownership. The issue is for DFS this week is that Tyler Lockett is the one with the lower ownership, most likely, because he's 1K lower on DraftKings in particular than DK, but he's also the one with the better matchup, honestly. DK Metcalf, of course, will be against Tre'Davious White, but more importantly, Buffalo's interiors, we attack both with tight ends, with wide receivers, and in the slot, of course, is where Lockett will be. On the other side of the ball as well, like Buffalo has targeted wide receivers at the second highest rate in the league. And that's exactly where we're targeting players against Seattle's secondary. It looks like Jamal Adams may be back this week, but it doesn't matter because we're not playing a Buffalo tight end anyhow. We're going to play 2 wide receivers. Everyone's going to focus on one in particular. So the total is one that even if Buffalo doesn't carry their own weight, and I think they can and will, the fact is we still love Russ and DK and Tyler in this particular matchup.
All right, Rich. The Metcalf Lockett deal, it feels like you should probably roster one of these guys. One of them's going to go nuts. And, obviously there's been a big discrepancy the last 2 weeks. And we've already spent way too much time. We smashed the over as far as matchups. White presumably is going to be on Metcalf. He's also more expensive. What do you do with that in cash? What do you do with that in tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, you can try to get cute and go against the grain because this is going to be a week 2 where everyone's going to want to play Lockett. Everyone's on Lockett already this early in the week. Because that matchup and the 2 bigger body cornerbacks that Seattle's faced that they've had shadow have been Lockett games. You go to the New England game and Metcalf did catch the long touchdown on Stephon Gilmore, but Lockett had the 7 catches. He only had 7 yards. They gave him a score. And then the night that they just let Tyler Lockett beat Drake Kirkpatrick over and over and over again to the tune of 20 targets when Patrick Peterson shadowed him was clearly a Lockett game as well. It's a bummer that because the first 3 weeks of the season, these guys each had a 20% team target share higher in each of the first 3 games together. And then it's just completely oscillated. It's been one or the other every week since. Obviously, everyone's going to be on Lockett. It's really hard. But Daigle's point, I mean, it's a complete wide receiver game in general. I mean, this is Seattle wide receivers lead the league in catchable target rate, and the Bills are second, right behind them. And then you look on the other side, 64% of the non-passing PPR points Seattle's allowed have been scored by opposing wide receivers, the highest rate in the league by far. Stephon Diggs has been really rock solid, getting traded over to Buffalo this year. And the past month, his usage has just basically just gone insane. And it's probably a part of why the Bills may have honestly started to struggle as well. I mean, you think of the first opening 4 games, they were spreading the ball around. Guys are like Gabriel Davis are making plays. John Brown's making plays. Cole Beasley's been pretty good the whole season. But then the last month, Stephon Diggs has gone from a 24% team target share the first 4 weeks to 35% the past 4 weeks, 42% of the team air yards the past month, as opposed to 34% prior. They're just jamming him targets. It's basically what their offense has kind of devolved into. They were a team throwing a lot on first down. They were running a lot of jet motion. They were running a lot of play action. All that's kind of come down the past month, and Diggs has been fine. They're jamming him targets, but the rest of the offense has kind of struggled. It's a good get right spot for, I think, these guys, all these guys, these ancillary pieces. John Brown especially is intriguing. If I can talk you into a guy that's had 5 catches for 63 yards since week 2, I'm going to try to do it. I mean, so last week he came back. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup, but he ran a pass rate on 96% of the team dropbacks. We know that Seattle has already allowed 17 different wide receivers, 17 to post double-digit PPR points in a game this season. He is dirt cheap on both sites. We know he's got some big playability as well. This could be a game where you run with just Diggs, your favorite Bills receiver of choice, because also Seattle's been really bad against slot receivers as well. So you can play Diggs, Brown, and Beasley together. You can play him with Josh Allen. You can play him with Russ. You can come back with just Lockett. I mean, that's pretty much going to be the bread and butter combo here of how you're trying to bring this back, because all the other guys are really, you're just getting cute with. David Moore hasn't had more than 3 catches or 3 targets in any game this season. He's always a fun guy you like to look at, but that's it. Gabriel Davis is getting no burn now, and Will Dissly has closed the gap on Greg Olsen now. So it's really we're really highlighting those core guys, and they're at the receiver position.
I said I was going to mention a lot of FanDuel, but I'm about to mention DraftKings again, if only because Dissly is actually priced only $2,700, whereas Greg Olsen is popping as the better value at $3,100. But Dissly closed the gap last week, and the past 2 weeks, Seattle has run the most plays in the league out of 12 personnel. So we can actually expect Dissly to be on the field against a defense that's allowed the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And again, from the slot in line, that's where they continue to struggle. Matt Milano just being terrible this year and covering tight ends, probably because he's just banged up every single week. So I do kind of like sneaking in Dissly, to be honest, but Dissly and John Brown are like my favorite ancillary pivots or just cheap options in general in this entire slate.
You think Beasley is safer than Brown and Brown has more upside? Is that fair to say?
Beasley's safer, yes, but his best games have come while John Brown was pretty much banged up. Even in that game, he returned and played 94% of the snaps 3 weeks ago, and he dropped a few balls. He dropped a touchdown in the back of the end zone. Like that's when Beasley has seceded. So it definitely can happen, but I'm still higher personally for tournaments on John Brown than Beasley.
It's Wednesday night here, Hribar, but what are we expecting? What do you expect, and how do you react as far as the Seattle backfield? With Carson, a homer, of course, DJ Dallas had a big game last week. I don't think it's going to be his backfield once again, but we'll see on Sunday. You have early thoughts?
Early word was that Carlos Hyde looks to be more doubtful. Homer is going to play again and probably maybe potentially even have an extended role. Not sure. I mean, DJ Dallas was essentially, David Montgomery last week. He ran a pass route on 77% of the team dropbacks. We just seen like you don't have to be efficient if you have an in line to the touches that matter, running pass routes and getting goal line carries. Because if you fall into the end zone twice, you're there. So I mean that's what we'll have to wait and see, early in the week to see if like maybe Carson tries to go. This team never seemingly wants to rule Carson out until it's like the last minute in the 11th hour. Granted, they play at 1 this week. We won't have to wait until the late swap like we had to take advantage of last week. And I did late swap to him too. It just didn't matter because my lineups were still just too bad.
Yeah, I was demoralized too, and I don't think I could salvage. I was thinking about it, and I had some Coleman as well at 4K, and I was trying to decide which one to play, and I don't think it mattered. I was like, yeah, I'm too far buried. Doesn't make a difference.
I had Coleman as well, and he did lead the team in carries for that drive and a half, but then he got banged up again, so it didn't matter at all.
Moss and Singletary, it feels like Moss is creeping up a little bit. He did fall into the end zone twice last week. He actually played pretty well, too, it's worth saying. Both of them, I think, got 14 carries, if I'm not mistaken, in a game that they beat New England in. Are the prices cheap enough here, Daigle, to consider either one?
I mean, the only issue is that Josh Allen is still this team's red zone back or goal line back, of course. Even the past 2 weeks, let's say, 2 carries inside the 10-yard line. He had a touchdown from there, so Zach Moss's line could have been higher. I just don't, since it's still a timeshare, Zach Moss is clearly the lead in this backfield now, but still Devin Singletary is involved between the 20s enough to where I think it takes away from Moss's floor, really. And so I would just take a chance on Josh Allen, perhaps double stacking him instead and getting away from the running backs altogether, since Moss's value, in my opinion, does come down to running inside the 10-yard line over Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one feels like a passing game, but of course the kids are going to say, the sharp kids will like their leverage. Moss feels like a leverage play. Whatever happens to that, if we get a clean outcome as far as that Seattle backfield, if Carson's a go, we shall see. And yeah, they're always trying to be deceptive there in Seattle. Carroll, for whatever reason, I don't know if they think Buffalo's game planning for Carson, just want to waste their time for a few hours. Who knows what's going on there? Summarize this game for us, Hribar. Wilson, Allen, you got to pick one of these quarterbacks. You're making one single entry lineup. Who is it?
Probably Allen, because I want to play 2 Bills guys. I think I probably would just go with Allen. And you get to like Daigle said, he's the goal line back. Imagine not knowing that wasn't a QB draw last week when they played the Patriots, when they're empty on the 3-yard line, and that Josh Allen isn't just running a QB draw. It's crazy. But yeah, I'll probably go Allen. I think the chalk stack is Allen, 2 Bills, and Lockett. So I think that's the chalk stack, the square play.
And we just haven't seen Josh Allen for a month now. He had that weird Tuesday night Tennessee game, short turnaround against the Chiefs on Monday night. The Jets, which he should have been better, but again, they reached the red zone 8 times. They didn't punt the ball. They just couldn't score it in that game. And then, of course, last week against New England's defense, who always plays them well. So this is finally a boom spot for Josh Allen and the Bills to carry their own weight on offense.
It feels really hard to score 18 points and not punt. I don't know if it feels like a record or something like that, but that's definitely something that happened.
He missed 2 field goals too.
Yeah, Tyler Bass.
Yeah.
By the way, I just noticed on the zoom in, Rich's Bojack shirt. I just want to say, I just want to applaud that because it's like my favorite show of all time.
Bojack,
beautiful.
I picked up smoking during that show because it's so depressing, but it's still my favorite show of all time.
We'll do a Bojack podcast one day. There's a lot to cover.
This week is too long. Let's move on.
The next game we'll talk about, the Kansas City Chiefs, again, they had like a 34-35 team total. They definitely met that last week. Once again, 31.5 team total facing the Carolina Panthers, a 21 team total, 10-point favorite here. 52.5 is the total. The return of CMC. Who do you want to start with here, Hribar, as far as Kansas City or Carolina? Who are you more excited about?
I mean, we're always more excited about the Chiefs. I mean, they have the largest team total again on the slate. Just tried and true, man, every week. You see, like last week, even when you're on him, it's just Mahomes. He got the 2 to Tyreek. Kelsey got 1. Hardman got 1. Demarcus Robinson got 1. The backs didn't do anything. This is a matchup where you'd love to look at the backs and the backfield production that's been put up on Carolina so far this season. And we also have this weird thing where Carolina, they don't blitz. They don't put any pressure on quarterbacks. They just drop back and play zone coverage, and they don't even try to rush the passer. They're 28th in the NFL in blitz rate. That's kind of what has been how teams have approached Patrick Mahomes. They don't blitz him outside of the Ravens, and they got roasted because he's just destroyed the blitz this season. He's averaging 9.7 yards per pass attempt against the blitz this season, 7.7 yards against teams when they don't blitz, which is still good. It's just it's just a 2-yard difference. It's like when people used to cite Drew Brees' splits on the road. It's like, yeah, but on the road, he's still really better than all the other quarterbacks on the road. He's just not ungodly. That's kind of where we are with Mahomes versus the blitz and all the zone coverage teams are throwing him. The Panthers, that's their game. They don't want to get beat deep. They don't want to give up chunk plays in the passing game. That's why they're in the top 5 in yards allowed per completion and yards per pass attempt allowed, even though they faced a good, healthy amount of good quarterbacks as well so far in this season. They've definitely faced their share of bad quarterbacks as well. But that's why they're just an inviting team. They invite teams to run and play slow games. Teams against the Panthers average the fewest possessions per game in the NFL because they run the ball and they don't stop the clock. They don't throw in completions. So, I mean, it's a game where you're looking for a hyper-efficient offense, and the Chiefs can provide that. This could be, like I said, just an intriguing spot where we don't get the 5 passing touchdowns from Mahomes. We've seen in these games where they're willing to just lean on the run game, let Clyde Edwards-Helaire run, let whatever touches they're going to give to Le'Veon Bell happen. It's kind of a intriguing ground here because, you have to pay for Mahomes. It's not like last week where you pay for him, but no one's really on him. And he comes at a discount. I mean, I still think that people are going to be looking at the Chiefs this week in that game to potentially get there. But I mean, it's just when you look at the way Carolina plays defense, it doesn't set up for like a bonanza game from the passing game.
Yeah, 8.1K for Mahomes on DK, which is more expensive than the aforementioned Wilson, more expensive than Allen, 1.1K more. And I believe on FanDuel, he's more expensive than Bose as well. Wilson's 9K, Allen is 8.2. And looks like Mahomes is 9.3, but the price is warranted. The price is justified. But Daigle, I think at least as of right now, I'm probably going to start with that Seattle Buffalo game. Of course, I make more than one lineup, and by all means, it makes a lot of sense to get to that KC team as well. And who's the most natural pairing? And that's the tricky part with KC because it can be one of 5 or 6 guys depending on the week. You're rostering Mahomes. Who's your favorite pairing with him?
Well, all these numbers are skewed the past 2 games just because they've been afforded to bench their starters. That's why Le'Veon Bell is getting in the field. That's why I'm very interested in Clyde Edwards-Helaire for all the reasons Rich mentioned, but also because perhaps people are worried that Bell may cut into his time even more. And that could happen, but I think it's worth the risk now that he's only like 6,100 on DraftKings. Touchdown dependent, of course, so a bit trickier on FanDuel. But either way, I think he's still the clear workhorse in that situation. But for me, if I am going with Mahomes, it would be Travis Kelce, tried and true, defying Levitan's age model. It doesn't matter at all. The dude still shows up and is a top 5 tight end every single week. Everyone spent their offseason arguing about which late round tight ends to a tight end 1. The answer was 1, none of them. And 2, it doesn't matter. Just draft Travis Kelce in the first 2 rounds. Just get it over with and be consistent. But also, I'm high on Mecole Hardman. Again, the numbers are skewed. But for the first time, he actually ran more routes than Demarcus Robinson this past week. Actually outsnapped him as well. It was just efficient. 7 of his 9 targets came while Mahomes and the starters were still on the field. If they just get him this amount of volume, that's what he can do weekly. It's clearly it's volatile. It's boom or bust. That's why it's much better for tournaments. But I have no fear in going back to him. And I'm someone who played Demarcus Robinson last week. Once I saw the field going to the cheap Jets receivers, I wanted the Chiefs receivers. And admittedly, I backdoored into Marcus Robinson since Mecole Hardman was surprisingly used over him. But I think this offense unlocks more if Hardman's on the field.
Yeah. Until Mims chalk week is one of the more bizarre things that I can think of, man. We've pushed a lot of min price dudes up, and I've done my fair share of it too. But
I got some more today too. Don't worry.
A Sam Darnold receiver that wasn't even the slot receiver that we knew was going to get the most targets became chalky.
I was victory lapping in the first quarter. I'm not going to lie. I had a whole bunch of them. I'm chalk donkey. I saw somebody out there on Twitter talking about how he had a total apparently of, I think, 42 and a half was his yardage total. Maybe on DK or something like that.
First quarter.
He got 42 in the first quarter. He ended the game with 42. He's like, I'm good.
And the guy who got the targets, of course, the past 2 weeks now has 18 targets for 69 yards. That's not nice, by the way. It's awful.
Barrios. Oh, yeah. Man. PPR monster. I think what's his name? Who took down the Leone took down the stack.
Leone, yeah, he took down the Thunderdome.
And by the way,
my 10-cent tournament lineup had 6 more points than Leone's Thunderdome winning lineup. It still hurts, by the way. It still absolutely.
Well, you got to enter too. It's hard to enter for 5,300. That's the key. That's one of the keys.
That is true too. Yeah.
I saw somebody saying if they max entered at 150 entries, that they would win it. Like, well, yeah, you would.
But you got to do it.
And I don't even know how you get it 150 out of 30. But that's a whole other conversation.
That's the Rich penalty theory. When people cite that touchdowns didn't count and they use it as positive, Rich is like, yeah, they were cheating. Of course, you can't cheat to score a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Hribar, they're talking about CEH in the chat. Are we excited about CEH? It's a CEH week. And then CMC, he's 8.5K on DK. I imagine he's not going to play 100% of the snaps on his first week back. And that's, we've paid 10K for him in the past. Now he's 9.5 on FanDuel, 8.5 on DK. They're talking about working Davis in, he earned a spot to some degree. Maybe they're both out there at the same time. I don't know. Is it like a wait and see on McCaffrey, or is it like let's fire and see what happens? Maybe we have a ceiling game right out the gate.
I mean, and in tournaments and game stacks, if you're blocking this game, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I don't think he's a necessity to play in cash, just because, I mean, I think it's another really good spot for you. We could play like Dalvin Cook if we want. We've got some other cheaper guys that I think we believe can get there, like Chase Edmonds, if there's no Kenyon Drake. But I mean, I don't really see any reason to run away if he is playing, like to just go back to him. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was playing 95% of the snaps. Like the guy just never came off the field. So like a reduction still could mean a higher than every other running back, within the league. There still is opportunity there. And then you talk about just the kind of player he is and how just productive he's been. He's really hard to get away from. He's basically this era's Marshall Faulk, despite what Bruce Arians says about Alvin Kamara. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, same story. Like you really can't play him in cash, but yeah, game stacks and game blocks, especially like to go a pivot off of the Chiefs passing game. Because even though they have had blowouts, his usage per snap played, his utilization per snap is way down since they've gotten Le'Veon Bell. His opportunities per snap been 44.4% against Denver and 27.3% last week. So he was still not getting the ball as much per snap or getting as targeted per snap as he was prior, which is 51% of the time prior to that. So, I mean, there still is a level of where we have to see him play a full game competitive to see where this kind of shakes out, but he is actually being used less too with the opportunities that he's been given. It is an opportunity though, when you look at defensively, Carolina is allowing 4.7 yards per carry to running backs. That's 25th. Opposing backfields touch the ball 30.1 times per game against them. That is 27th in the league as well. The Chiefs, granted, they don't care about any of those numbers. They're going to play whatever the hell they want to do and make you stop what they do. But they have acquiesced to us this year when teams just drop back and play so much zone coverage. If you're going to let them run the ball for 6 yards a time, they'll do it. Patrick Mahomes has complained about it after a couple games, but he said, hey, if we're ripping yards, we're going to keep ripping yards. I mean, yeah, I think he's an interesting turn play. You just have to hope he gets in the box, like Daigle said. I mean, even that Denver touchdown he scored from 11 yards out, we still have yet to see them get down to like the 2-yard line and see who comes in. And like if they run like a halfback power or something, like we haven't seen that yet. So, I mean, until that happens, it's always going to be in the back of our minds. Like, is he going to get these carries? But yeah, no complaints. He's a direct pivot here.
I think it'll come down to ownership Sunday morning, because this is now 2 times in the past 3 weeks that the winning tournament strategy was to pivot to the Chiefs passing game. I guess the difference here is that I think Carolina can actually carry their weight in this matchup. And if they do, then maybe the Chiefs do keep their foot on the gas through the air. But also, it's going to depend, because I do really want to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because if that becomes the primary strategy to stack Mahomes, then I want to try something else as well, because there's a quarterback we're going to talk about soon that I really like this week a lot.
You're stacking up the Chiefs. Who's your favorite bring back here, Daigle? Your favorite bring back in Carolina?
It's Robbie Anderson. The past month has dictated really a changing of the guard. Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore are very close in that span in air yards, literally just 5 yards apart. But DJ Moore instead, unlike Robbie Anderson that first month, has 2 red zone targets compared to Anderson's zilch, and then leads the team in end zone targets as well in that span. Of course, Christian McCaffrey could return and ruin this for everyone. Maybe he's the run back here. But the fact that Robbie Anderson now has gone a full 5 games without scoring a touchdown, whereas DJ Moore has 3 in the past month, I'm just trying to find the positive regression person who they're still using like their number 1 receiver in both deep shots and intermediate level of the field. And I would go Robbie Anderson personally.
How about Robbie Anderson turning into last year's DJ Moore?
Yeah.
That's what's happened.
Is that your answer as well, though? Is Anderson your answer as well, Hribar, as far as your favorite bring back in Carolina?
I mean, they're both the Spider-Man meme. Everyone kind of wants to pick one everyone kind of wants to pick one or the other guy. The answer to these guys is both, man. Their usage is almost identical. The one difference, as Daigle said, is that DJ Moore has 5 end zone targets this season. He's kind of the guy getting the actual plays called for him when they get to the box. To try to put it in the paint. I mean, the Chiefs are excellent against wide receivers, and they have been the last 3 years running. But, I mean, this is what Carolina does. The ball's going to go to these 2 players. I'm curious with McCaffrey back if they take McCaffrey off the field inside the 10 and give Curtis Samuel a carry with McCaffrey back in the fold. You can pull that stuff with Mike Davis. Let's see if Christian McCaffrey allows that.
Do we expect that? We don't expect that, do we?
It's happened 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, but it's not McCaffrey, but that's a reasonable point.
I actually do believe Matt Rule that they will play Mike Davis. I mean, I still don't think it's going to be like a 85-15, 80-20, but I think they will play Mike Davis because they know they're out. Like 2 of the top 3 seeds in the NFC right now belong to the NFC South.
They signed him long term. Why run him into the ground at this point?
Exactly.
But also, like, why bring him back if you're not? It's that you mentioned BoJack Horseman, and in my brain, what's his name? Aaron Paul. He hosts. He's one of the voices in that show. I was thinking Breaking Bad, like the full measures, half measures. Like, why half measure it here with CMC if you're going to bring him back? But I don't know. We shall see. Stay tuned, and I think he's got to be in the tournament bucket if nothing else. What's your thought? Feel free to
at least BoJack was better for Aaron Paul than Need for Speed was. I'll say
that. Not a Need for Speed fan.
I don't think anyone is. To be quite.
Well, keep cashing them checks, Aaron Paul. Great actor, but probably a poor movie choice there. We got anything else here, Hribar, Daigle? We're moving on.
No, last season of Westworld was awful too.
Yeah, that's true too. I'll quickly. It's not really a case to play Teddy Bridgewater, but he's not a bad option, honestly. To be fair, I'm not going to have him, but again, I'll defend it just because the Chiefs have not been tested in the past month, ever since really they played the Raiders, and the Raiders hung 40 on them in a win against them. But ever since then, their stats have been padded because they got Josh Allen in that short week we mentioned earlier, and then Drew Lock, and then the Jets this past week. And so at least the Panthers are averaging the 5th most yards per drive. They're an efficient offense with who could be getting back Christian McCaffrey now. So there's reason to believe that the Panthers will answer and respond against the Chiefs defense at least.
I think we're moving on. You mentioned the Raiders. It's a good segue to our next game, our third of the 3 games. And, of course, we're going to break it down position by position. Some players that we have not talked about that are in different games. There's 11 games in the slate, focusing on 3. We'll branch out and talk about the other 8. Raiders, Chargers, 26.5 total for the Chargers, 25.5 for the Raiders. It's high and it's tight. 52 game total here. 52 as far as the number. Hey, man, I feel like we're talking about Herbert every single week. And every single week it's like, wow, this guy is really, really impressive. And look, I'm not a draft guy. I'm not a college guy. But a lot of people are just crapping all over the Chargers, like saying this is a terrible pick. And who is this guy? And he was bad in college. But he looks legit to me. He looks awesome so far. And this is a pristine matchup as well. We talk about some quarterbacks that we like a good bit. And well, you kind of referenced it there, Daigle, that there's a quarterback coming up in a game that you are going to talk about. And maybe you like Carr a little bit, but I feel like you were referencing Herbert, you not?
It's our God. It's Justin Herbert. I mean, man, this guy, I love watching him. First of all, I hope people are off the Raiders in general because of the weather last week, and they don't understand how good the Raiders offense is. I'll let Reeves talk about that. But for the Chargers, okay, well, also they're going to be in LA, so no weather concerns. Also, since this has become a around the world food podcast, I'll tell you, Oscar's Tacos and the grilled cheese truck, the best you can find in San Diego. So if you're in the area and you're wearing a mask, please go check those 2 places out. But for all the reasons that we liked Baker Mayfield last week, it's the same thing here, except with a consistent, much better quarterback averaging the 5th most fantasy points per game at his position. The Raiders are still getting pressure at the 23rd highest rate or lowest rate, second to last in sack rate. And now the Chargers, since their bye, I have a lot of issues still with Anthony Lynn. I still think he's doing a poor job. But the fact is, in the first half, the past 2 weeks, this offense is averaging the 5th highest pass play rate as opposed to running the ball, what they were doing in the first 7 games of this season before their bye. So now with Justin Herbert, they understand what they have. They're just more efficient throwing the ball. He flips field position with a single flick of his wrist. And so, yes, in this spot against the Raiders defense, we like to attack for all the reasons I mentioned. I'm all over Justin Herbert double stack here.
All right, Hribar, you on board?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this game is, it's the same reason why we were circling the Raiders last week, and then the Cleveland weather kind of got in the way.
It was real.
They're good. The Raiders are a legit good offense, and I don't know if anyone realized it. They're 6th in the NFL in EPA on offense. They've scored on 55% of their drives, which is the highest rate in the league. They score on a higher rate in their drives than the Chiefs, the Saints, the Bucks, and these other good offenses. I think of they score more per possession, and then on defense they are allowing 3.1 points per drive, which is the highest rate in the league. So they don't play any defense either. They're exactly what we want. They're just, everyone just has this, obviously the stigma of Derek Carr, and he's not an exciting quarterback, and he's not sexy, and he's boring, and he gives terrible post-game interviews, and no one likes him. But the offense is good. It's efficient, and they just don't have household names like guys we glom onto. Josh Jacobs is like an extension of Derrick Henry, and he's getting used somewhat more in the passing game, but still not even in the context of being like a guy that is you play for getting receiving points. And they've got Darren Waller, who's a nice, really good, solid player, and probably now the second best tight end for the remainder of the season, outside of Travis Kelce. But outside of that, they don't have like anybody like we're super excited to play always. They never kind of make it, but they play in these high scoring games. They've played a bunch of good defenses that they've hung with. So I don't really expect that. And then the Chargers defense, that just gave up a backdoor 30 points to Drew Lock. I'm not willing to qualify as a good defense in that context. So it could be a really fun game. And honestly, the Chargers, for as much as we talk about like the Seahawks always playing weird games, like the Chargers are starting to be that other team too. Like all their games are just weird as hell now. Even when they played the Jaguars 2 weeks ago, like we're getting Jaguars block punts for touchdowns, and like all their games are shooting out. They're not playing normal ones ever either. So all these
have
Chargers
they played
games
the Falcons yet? Like who would win in a Chargers-Falcons game? Because it would be nobody. Like a tie.
They do play though this year.
I'm looking forward to that.
Hopefully Calvin's healthy, because that's going to be the ultimate shootout, and it's going to come down to a last failed possession.
Yeah, they do play, but yeah, I mean it's hard to get away from. I mean, it's easily, you look at Keenan Allen. This show has a long history with Mike Williams, so I'm not going to talk about him. Seemingly the only guy that cannot get off with Justin Herbert is Hunter Henry, even though he's running a pass route at 80% of the dropbacks. Like he's had 39 yards or fewer and 4 catches or fewer in each of his past 4 games, although everyone else is like seemingly just going off and doing things with Herbert. So maybe we'll get some maybe we'll have the Hunter Henry breakout game for all the people that have been chasing it the past month. But yeah, I mean, this game looks like a lot of fun. On the other side, Henry Ruggs' usage is way up. The past 3 games, he's run a pass route on 63%, dropped 70%, and then 90% last week. Should have had a touchdown last week, only got 1 foot down. I hope people are off of Aguilar because the game didn't help. Just wasn't going to do him any favors. He was averaging 20 yards per catch. They didn't throw the ball downfield at all. The one thing I will say about Aguilar that you do have to monitor is that Bryan Edwards did practice last week, and so monitor if he's going to practice again into this week, and if he is back, just to be another guy that can kind of get reps and kind of make this thing spread out a little bit more. Aguilar only ran a route on 24% of team dropbacks when Edwards was active, but I think he's earned a role still too, so we'll have to see. So that might just throw it off a little bit, but yeah, I hope everyone is off the Raiders because they're a better offense than people think. And then last week's weather game probably makes them not want to go back when people were talking them up last week.
Limited participant Wednesday night for Edwards, Wednesday afternoon, I suppose, as far as practicing, and keep an eye on that. Your favorite player to pair with Carr, if not Waller, Daigle?
So I'm going to have a come to God moment, because I do want to play Aguilar over Henry Ruggs after Henry Ruggs ran a season high 90% of his routes on Derek Carr's dropbacks, because they're just not using Henry Ruggs the way we want them to. They're still only getting him involved in deep shots. They tried to get him a shallow touchdown this past week, but he did not put his second foot down, which turns out to be an issue when you're an NFL receiver. So it did not happen. So I prefer Aguilar because everyone's going to be off him, but his usage did not change. Again, it does come down to Bryan Edwards. And then I'll also follow the tea leaves to see if they would even play Bryan Edwards if he's active. But yes, right now on a Wednesday, I like Aguilar a whole lot. It's actually the first receiver. This game and Aguilar was like the first things I thought of the moment I saw the slate. I was like, yes, Justin Herbert double stack. We run this back with Aguilar, who everyone hates, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I know you guys were big on this game last week, and we're kind of running back to the same sort of thought process. And again, there was some goofy weather out there that, we're just throwing it out. And we're thinking that this is the week to do it as far as Aguilar. Even Ruggs, I think, has a shot to get loose as well, too. As far as the running backs, Jackson, Kelly, or neither? Anybody have a take here?
I mean,
it's Tremaine Pope.
Or Tremaine Pope, yeah. So I was listening to my roommate Evan Silva's AFC review podcast, and he actually still on the ground like he's 14 years old still, DM'd a bunch of Chargers writers, and apparently that was just a hot hand situation. The way I perceive that, though, is that Tremaine Pope was the hot hand, and yet Justin Jackson still outtouched him 20-15 and ran as many routes as Pope did. So that would make me higher on Justin Jackson still and just getting away from Pope and Josh Kelly altogether.
Yeah. Rich, who's your favorite amongst these three? I'm not sure if it's worth figuring out. One of them's probably going to get there. I don't know who it's going to be, though.
Well, I mean, the last 3 games with no Austin Eckler, there's been one back that's led the team in yardage every game. It was Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
All right. So we like Jackson?
I mean, he's probably not going to score is the problem.
Because they will put in Josh Kelly in the 10-yard line. That's the
He's not going to score a touchdown is the problem. But he's easily the best bet to lead the team, though, in yardage. He's been the most efficient back, and he's done it every week since Eckler's been out. It's just, yeah, you're probably not going to get a touchdown.
The other Josh in this game, what about Jacobs?
Yeah, I mean, you can always play. I mean, you know what you're getting. I mean, he's second behind Derrick Henry in percentage of teams' touches. He's just not going to catch a lot of passes. They're not going to go away from him. It's what they do. So, I mean, you're always going to get those touches from him. He's typically not the type of guy I like to just play in DFS just because, if he doesn't score a touchdown. Like last week, he had 128 yards. Useless. I mean, you got nothing. He's just typically not the archetype of player I like to play in DFS, especially when he comes with his price tag. Because if he doesn't score a touchdown, you don't get there.
He got 128 yards, and he was the RB20 on the week in PPR leagues. Like, it's just, like Reeve said, it's useless.
I was told he would catch the ball more this year. Apparently it's not happening just yet, so stay tuned, I suppose.
You were told wrong.
It wasn't a lie.
He's running like 10 more routes per game, but that's the tallest short person. It's like
incrementally more.
You went from 7.5 routes to like 17. Big deal.
Other quarterbacks we like this week, I think we have to definitely focus on that Detroit game as far as what's going on, especially from a salary perspective. Chase Daniel, if he gets to start, he's $6K on FanDuel, which I guess is a little less interesting than – I mean, that's playable, kind of opens things up for sure, but he's $4K on DK, which a playable quarterback at $4K on DK. And again, this is Wednesday night. We don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. I just saw a tweet by Schefter earlier today that's saying there's a chance that Stafford might get cleared. He's currently on a COVID list. If Chase Edmonds is 4K on DK, that can really open some things up. Who wants to hype up Chase Daniel? Not everybody at once. Anybody?
So the good. Okay, so I'm a FanDuel guy, fake FanDuel guy.
Okay.
Don't play Chase Daniel. How about that? Because at that site, you are allowed to do too much. Even with Dalvin Cook at 9,300, you can still easily fit him in. We have a ton of receiver values we will discuss. This week is not the week on FanDuel, at least, to get cute with Daniel.
Hribar, you have a thought of 4K on DK here? Or maybe it's not even, it's Wednesday night, whatever. We'll figure it out when we get there if we need to get there, but who knows?
Yeah, I would hate to waste a bunch of effort and then, have it not, on Wednesday and then not have
You're not going to use much effort on Chase Daniel.
Let's spend effort on Jake Luton. I'm told that's a person.
Yeah, I mean, Jake Luton is a thing. I've seen a lot of people want to stream the Texans defense. I mean, I think that's kind of Jake Luton. The one thing he did not do in college was throw interceptions. So, I mean, that could mean nothing. Could mean nothing here. But he did not turn the ball over a lot in college. That's the only thing he did well. So be curious to see what happens.
I had 4 defenses written in the RotoGrinders waiver wire column on Tuesday. And then I got mentions saying, hey, Texans not here. Did you miss them? And I was like, nope, I didn't miss them. They're still the Texans. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not going to play them.
Was Washington in that column?
Washington's number 1. Anyone against
Daniel Jones, I just assume they're they're like in the industry. They're ranked like number 2, I think, outside of Steelers this week.
Yeah.
So it's like they're not sneaking up on anyone.
The Steelers, the highest price ever on DK. I know we don't talk about a defense here, but they're like 4.9 or something like that. They're 5K on FanDuel, but they're going to be facing not Danucci, not Gilbert, or maybe Gilbert or some guy named Cooper.
I mean, Daigle probably has Garrett Gilbert takes. I mean, the AAF passing leader.
He was part of the championship team that should have been crowned the Orlando Apollos.
Oh, well.
He was like far and away the best quarterback in that league. Having said that, it's actually worse that Cooper Rush or Garrett Gilbert would be under center because at least Danucci was running away, whereas these guys are just pocket sloths. Like they're statues. They stand in the middle, and we know this offensive line is one of the worst in the leagues now. I'm terrified for this team. I am absolutely terrified.
Yeah, I know they have that streak in Pittsburgh where they get a sack every game, they get a turnover every game. I feel pretty confident they're going to get one of those, at least one of those in this game.
I can't say that I'm going to play Steelers just yet. I have to play around with more lineups, but right now I wouldn't fault anybody on a Wednesday. Like it's like adding another running back, honestly, because their floor is so safe.
Over under 5.5 sacks for Pittsburgh.
Over.
Okay, that's
yeah.
All right. we don't really talk on the defense, but I guess it's worth acknowledging. Other quarterbacks we like this week, Hribar. For me, I think you got to talk about, well, let's pick on Jacksonville. Hopefully Jacksonville can kind of stick close, and that Houston defense is vulnerable. I don't know what Luton is. Maybe you can keep it close, get Watson to throw the ball, and keep on running it as well. Deshaun is kind of jumping for me as a kind of a potential option outside of the quarterbacks we already talked about. Talk about Watson if you like it, if you're intrigued. Anybody else off the board?
Yeah, well, I mean, Watson's easy. I mean, he's been playing really well the last month. I mean, over 9 yards surpassed him to his last 5 games. We love him. We love that they didn't trade Will Fuller for Will Fuller's sake and Deshaun Watson's sake. Love that. I think Lamar Jackson. Now, I tried to talk you out of Lamar Jackson last week.
Yeah.
Now I'm back in this week because this is Lamar Jackson's second game ever on turf. Ever. I mean, we're getting him indoors. The first one was against Houston this year, where he didn't do a lot in that game either. But it's like we're getting him on a fast track, which we just don't get a lot indoors. It's literally his second start ever with potentially a roof. It's a retro roof, but yeah, I mean that's exciting. I think that's exciting for J.K. Dobbins too. I know that Gus Edwards is still like a thing, and he's gonna get carries and potentially go on carries. But at Dobbins' price on that kind of fast track, it's still like I'd rather be early at like 5. He's 5.3 and 4.9 at both sites. Like if I get 16 more J.K. Dobbins touches that aren't against the Steelers, I'm probably just going to take them and see what I get. I'm just going to see where they go. I kind of like the Ravens, offense in a bounce back. We've got Marquise Brown in a real squeaky wheel situation, sending tweets. And then Jackson just basically came out today and said, I have to do better at getting him the football. The squeaky wheel narrative has been kind of playing out. Marvin Jones had 2 touchdowns last week on the squeaky wheel narrative. So we're going to ride it. I do think the Ravens bounce back, fast track. They had a chance to score a lot more points last week than what they did on the Steelers defense. A couple turnovers, in Pittsburgh territory. But they moved the ball really well against that Steelers defense. They just lost the ball at impromptu times. And I don't know if that will happen this week against the Colts. Colts are a good defense, but they are not the Steelers in my mind. So I do like going to the Ravens again this week, even though they have caused us so much heartache so far.
You did your best as far as talking about Lamar last week. It didn't work. Like I've been martingaling him since week 1, and I'm still waiting for that, upside he flashed, last year. And I think it's still there. I think he can still run for 100 and a touchdown and throw a couple as well too. And like you said, I like him.
The thing is, he's clearly not hurt. Like we were worried about. Like the last 2 games he's run a ton. We're waiting for that ceiling to pop again. What
do you have for Daigle? Any other quarterbacks that are worth throwing out there?
I mean, I guess we have to mention Kyler, if only for the rushing floor. The Dolphins defense is clearly overrated. It's Brian Flores. They know how to play Jared Goff. They have played Jared Goff historically, whether it was the Patriots or the Dolphins, very well. And that's all they did. They were under siege. They sent an extra attacker every single time, and it clearly flustered him. I do think it could also be because they're getting healthy, but also this is Kyler. We know his floor is safe. And that's why I like the Cardinals offense. I kind of like, okay, so I'm not going to play Tua, but I think the Dolphins offense will do enough in this game against the Cardinals, which makes me intrigued in running Kyler, because I think everyone's just down on Tua, thinking that perhaps the Cardinals will run away with this game. But either way, like I still have trust in Tua in his second game. That's not a lot to say.
Yeah, it's only a 4-point line, and it's hard to say if Tua was good or bad. They didn't really ask him to do anything that first game.
And it was Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Like it's tough for a rookie to get thrown in that situation.
Yeah, and like Big Ben, in theory, he's got a great matchup against Dallas, but I mean, I don't know if they're going to show mercy or not. I don't know how Dallas keeps up with them. I suppose they can. That's theoretically possible, but
they can't.
It might be a James Conner game, and that's kind of a good segue, I suppose, to running backs. Well, you also talk about Chase Evans as well too, and Miami defensively has been a rush funnel we've seen so far, better in the secondary as opposed to the front seven. And I think I've listened to a couple podcasts so far, read some articles so far, Hribar, and everybody's excited about Chase Edmonds this week, and I like it too. He's still plenty cheap, and there's not a ton of like obvious value as of right now on Wednesday night, and I think he's in my shell lineup in my head in a cash game. For right now, Chase Edmonds. That's one of the plays, is it not?
He's hard to get away from. He's the RB6 on DraftKings. He's the RB13 in pricing on FanDuel. Granted, you don't get the full PPR, but if he takes over Kenyon Drake's role, which he did last year when he was the lead back, that game against the Giants when he got his shot to be the lead back. He can handle, workload, and he did in college anyway as well. So if he can get close to the 18 touches that per game that Drake had with his receiving acumen in a good spot against like you said, a rush defense as a home favorite, he's checking a lot of boxes. And then you said when you get him, is it even cheaper on FanDuel at the RB13 pricing? Is that this guy? He's actually, I believe he's cheaper on just raw pricing. He's cheaper on FanDuel than DK actually. Maybe I have it just off by $100. I think he's there. It's $100 difference, but whatever. I digress. Miami's bad against the run. He's easy to play. The other guys behind him haven't played hardly at all this season, so I doubt that they get like Benjamin and what's the other guy's name?
Jonathan Ward.
Jonathan Ward. Jonathan Ward. So I mean, he's really hard to get away from. Like I said, especially at that pricing, he's on the board. You kind of mentioned Connor. I think Connor's just an easy smash here. The last time the Steelers were like heavy-handed, cruising through a game was the Browns game, and they threw 22 passes. And then, Ben's, whole thing, like they can probably get there and he can, get some passing touchdowns, but I don't think this is a heavy pass attempt game for the Steelers. And we've just been playing any running back we can against the Cowboys at this point. I mean, 44.4% of the offensive yardage gained against the Dallas Cowboys this season has come via rushing. It's the highest rate in the NFL. They're allowing 19.9 rushing points per game to opposing running backs. That's 31st in the league. What are you going to do, man? And James Conner's been awesome since week one when he left that game against the Giants. I mean, he's gone over 100 total yards in 4 of his 6 games. The only 2 games he didn't was against the Eagles and Ravens, 2 of the league's best run defense. And in both those games, he got in the paint still to save his, to save his line as well. And he's got 18 or more touches in all those games. So, I mean, it's really easy, I think, to play Conner when you're looking to figure out. And he saves you the conundrum of which Steelers receiver do you play this week?
As far as the running backs in the Miami situation, I think that's worth touching on. We'll see what happens there with Breida. I assume Breida's going to be available. Laird and Howard probably comes back to siphon those goal line touchdowns, and maybe nobody gets there. But as of right now, Breida 4.7 on FanDuel, 4K stone minimum on DK, certainly in play as well. What do you have for me as far as the Miami situation there, Daigle, and other running backs that kind of pop for you?
I'm still worried about Breida because I think Jordan Howard will be involved. If Breida's out, I'm guessing it would be DeAndre Washington between the 20s and Jordan Howard. Maybe his role expands a little bit like it did that first month where he was primarily the back inside the 10-yard line. But yeah, I think it's going to be a 3-headed backfield, honestly. So I'm a little bit worried about Breida among the cheaper options. Of course, Dalvin Cook, like I know his price is high, but even without Stafford, and I think Stafford plays, by the way, but even without Stafford, it was kind of shaping up to be an absolute smash spot. I was hoping people would get too cute and do the thing where like they're trying to find leverage off of Cook. So they play Kirk Cousins with like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. But the Lions organization, we know Matt Patricia builds a 22-man unit and they forget about the other guys going down to 53. And that's what's happening right now. Like it's just a bad team because they're injured. They couldn't afford to lose 2 guys, Trey Flowers on defense, Kenny Golladay on offense. And those are the 2 guys they lost. So I think it's just the Vikings big in this game, and that would be at the hands of Dalvin Cook. And as we know, that's Mike Zimmer's wet dream because he let Kirk Cousins throw 14 pass attempts last week. He doesn't care. He's just going to run Dalvin Cook all day. Dalvin Cook had 32 of the team's 35 carries. Even Alexander Madison isn't an issue. So I'm paying up for Dalvin Cook everywhere, even on FanDuel where we talked about Derrick Henry being 9,500, but at least Dalvin Cook is using the passing game more as well. So his floor is higher at 93. And then I also like Antonio Gibson off the bye.
Yeah.
I'm admittedly hoping for a little bit of a rookie post-bye bump here, but either way, Peyton Barber's 33% snaps before the bye were false because the Washington had absolutely smashed the Cowboys in the second half. I mean, the first half they were dominating so they could get Barber involved. And Gibson nearly mirrored J.D. McKissick in snaps, but Gibson's the one who still got 20 carries and more importantly, the carries inside the 10-yard line. And so now if I can just play him and hope for a little bit of a lottery bump in his usage, I think is a great play in a positive game script.
Yeah, I saw that the chat was talking about Kirk Cousins. Am I the same sort of thought process? It's like if they have their druthers, he throws the ball 15 times, and Cook and Madison just go nuts against this Detroit team. And hey, that's a good segue. You talk about Detroit with their all 22, or their 22 guys, and who's the next man up for wide receivers? Is it a Marvin stack? Quintez is back in our lives. They're pretty cheap, especially on DK. What are we doing here without Galladay out? Does anybody have any Detroit takes? Hribar, you go first.
Yeah, Marvin Hall and his huge target share and air yard share last week as well. I think Hawkinson is the bump guy. I mean, you look, he had season high target share last week. He's really come on the past 2 weeks, and he's getting more usage. He'd be the guy I'd look to get the bump. I think so. You even go back to the start of the season, Marv's usage, it really hasn't changed. Like nothing really changed for Marv when Galladay came back. He was still kind of getting this. He's still running a route and exercising on all those plays. Just found some targets. I mean, I'm probably not going to play any of those guys. I don't think. I mean, I'll have to see how it shakes out. I'll have to wait and see if Chase Daniel plays or not too. Obviously, if Stafford plays, that gives you a run back spot. I'm looking at a pretty gross stack. Well, the receiver isn't gross. The receiver is good, but I think the stacking potential of the game is gross. I don't know if people will get there. So I would bet on Calvin Ridley not playing in this game on Sunday. I saw a couple of the doctor folk out there basically say he really hasn't, he's low odds to play, didn't practice today. Since returning to the lineup, Julio has seen 10, 9, and 10 targets. He's been awesome in all 3 games. Denver, they're pretty good at getting opposing wide receiver ones, but again, this is an Atlanta Falcons team. Like we know what they're going to do. We know where the ball's going to go. Julio's going to get his opportunity. So if you want to get cute, if you can run a Julio, like Drew Lock, Noah Fant stack.
What are you doing to me?
And kind of have some fun. Jerry Jeudy played in the perimeter for the first time this season last week. He had run 75% of his routes in the slot prior to last week. Now, it could just because Tim Patrick didn't play, but they also moved KJ Hamler into the slot. Both those guys were slot players in college, and Hamler had played outside to start the year and Jeudy inside. So maybe they flip it and it stays where Jeudy and Tim Patrick are the outside perimeter wide receivers no matter what, even if Tim Patrick plays. He's pretty cheap, though, as well. I also think you can play the Atlanta defense, too, because Denver allows they're third in allowing over 5 sacks plus turnovers per game. Kind of fun. But that game, it's gross. But listen, Julio is a good play.
Julio also 20, 15, and 13 targets in the 3 games Calvin Ridley missed last year. It's like Julio, to me, is like not just a good play. He's like the play that you can't get away from because he should be priced like Devontae Adams, in my opinion, without Calvin Ridley. But he's only like 7,200 on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, where touchdowns matter, of course, we're chasing him as well.
If Ridley doesn't play, is there any secondary receiver you like at Atlanta that gets a bump, especially one of the cheapies, or it's just like throwing darts as far as Gage or Zacchaeus or even maybe Hunter?
We already did it when Julio was out, man, and it just you might run into like a floor, but there's no upside really. There's not a lot of upside with those guys.
Daigle, we're up against the clock a little bit. Feel free to fire off some receivers, maybe a tight end or two that you're looking at as of Wednesday night.
If you want to pivot away from the Steelers just smashing the Cowboys, Deontay Johnson's still a 30% target share in every full game he's played. And last week, it's a little overlooked. He walked out to the trainer's table with a hamstring injury, but still, I think he's the number 1 receiver, getting shallow targets in among them. Terry McLaurin returns from the bye with a 52% target share in his last game with Kyle Allen. I think people forgot that now that we're 14 days removed from it. He'll, of course, be shadowed by James Bradbury, but not really a matchup I'm worried about. Terry McLaurin is just #good. And then Brandon Cooks, we talked about why we like Deshaun Watson, but Brandon Cooks still leads his team in targets in the new regime with Romeo Crennel. And then I think everyone might chase Michael Pittman as the best receiver to play against the Colts, but I think it is Marcus Johnson, who's averaging 20 yards a catch, and he's the stone man on DraftKings and played 70% of the snaps whenever T.Y. Hilton just left this past game. Doesn't look like he's going to play. Also, Ashton Doolin not at practice. Doesn't look like he's going to play. So Marcus Johnson, I think, is just a better outright play than Michael Pittman.
I like those names. I like a 3K stone minimum guy as well too. I got to keep an eye on. I don't like rostering players in the Colts because like nobody ever seams to shine, and it's hard to figure out who's going to be from week to week at any position. It's
also different this week because we have to wait for the Ravens defense. Like they literally might have to call up all their practice squad to play linebacker, which would change the game entirely. Like we don't know just yet. So,
Hribar, fire off whatever else you have on your list. If you have any tight ends, by all means, fire away as well too. And of course, chat. You guys are with us. Like, subscribe, follow these guys on. Of course, you're following them on Twitter. If you're not, tell them where your Twitter is. Tell them where to get the content at.
Yeah, you got it. We covered most of the ground. I'm sure we'll have some stuff, get unearthed as the week goes on. We covered a lot of names there. Anytime we get Marcus Johnson drops to close the show, we're in a good place on a Wednesday. So, giving some people some things to think about.
Finish strong.
But, as usual, sharpfootballanalysis.com. Find the worksheet. Pre-Snap Motion Podcast with Chad Scott, Sharp Angles Podcast with Cleve Tay and Dan Pizzuta. Every Wednesday night, 9 Eastern, RotoGrinders Pick 6 with Dean and John Daigle. Shut it down.
And on Sunday, we're going to be together on Sunday.
I will be on this Sunday as well.
Yeah, 10-10 on the East Coast. Be good times for sure. Daigle, tell the people what you're up to. What was that you that wrote the Minshew scapegoat? Was that you on Roto World?
That was me. Yeah,
it was a great one.
Nicely done.
I know he has a hand injury, but also someone needs to get angry and point the blame at the organization. So you're all welcome. Yeah, at Not J Daigle on Twitter. I will not be here Sunday morning, unfortunately, with my friends. But if I get an invite later in the year, I will gladly come on and join my boy Dean. But until then, Roto World Football Podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be coming out with our Friday morning preview show later this week. And then I'll be back, of course, on Sunday morning for a start sit. Pretty much the only time I answer start sit, since this year is the most absolute insane thing I've ever experienced in my life. And when we get through it, we're all going to pat each other on the backs because we actually made it through it. And by the way, if you're in season long competing, like now is the best time to just grind and put your head down because you deserve it. Like it's like the bubble winner for the NBA. It's all about gratification and resilience right now. So fight through it. And it's going to be the best thing you have ever accomplished in your entire life. Even better than being bored. Don't worry.
Fun show, guys. That was Daigle. That was Hribar. I was Dean. Enjoy your football this week. We're out of here. Holler.